The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Why Reinforcement Systems Often Fail with Stephanie Hunter. This evening's webinar will provide participants with a greater understanding of what a reinforcement system is and the reasons why it can either be a success or a failure. My name is Dan McCloy. I'm part of the team at OTAC, and we're glad that you're able to join us. This webinar is being brought to you by the Oregon Technical Assistance Corporation. OTAC has been providing training and technical assistance to professionals and citizens concerned about intellectual and developmental disabilities since 1984. Participants in this evening's forum can submit questions through the chat box on the webinar console anytime during the presentation. And we're going to have time for a short question and answer session at the end of the presentation when fellow OTAC staff member Jennifer Allison will present your questions. This webinar is being recorded to share with others who weren't able to attend live tonight. Your telephones and microphones have been muted for this call. The recording of today's forum will be posted later on the OTAC website. So I want to thank you again for being with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Hello everyone, and welcome this evening to our presentation on alternatives to rewards and why reinforcement systems often fail. We're going to start with a poll question to see who's here tonight.
Yes, I'm just wondering who's in the audience tonight. Are you a parent or a guardian, primary care provider, foster care, a family member, DD service coordinator, personal agent, regional staff, or other? And it looks to me that, well, almost everybody's voted. We'll give you just another moment to get those votes in. All right. So it looks like it's split right down the middle between primary care provider, foster care, and other, 50-50.
All right, welcome. So one of the things about this presentation is I'll refer to child and parent. And I mean children of all ages, and parent could be foster provider or somebody in the role of providing that support. So when I use those terms, you might fit into a different role, but I'm talking about that relationship that you have with someone in that role of providing support. So what we're going to talk about tonight is reward systems, and one of some of the information that you might receive tonight may be in conflict with how you were raised, what you're currently doing. It may there's lots of research in support of reward systems, and there's lots of research opposed. So this is just some good information, but you will definitely want to approach this with individualizing it for the person that you're supporting, and what works and what doesn't work. So our learning objectives for this evening, we're going to get a basic understanding of why we might decide a reward system is the best tool for increasing motivation or changing behavior. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the roots of difficult behavior, understanding those underlying needs, what's truly reinforcing that behavior to continue. We're going to look at how you might modify the current reward systems that you are using. And we'll talk briefly at the end about alternatives to using reward systems altogether, and then some quick notes on how to get started, either implementing a reward system, doing those modifications, and approaching behavior and understanding how to reinforce it in a different way. So we're going to kind of break it out into steps as we go through this evening. So this first step is reward systems, understanding why we use reward systems. So we'll talk about that, and that will be in your process of deciding if this is a good fit or if you want to make changes, looking at your own motivations for using a reward system. We're going to look at identifying the underlying needs to difficult behavior and what's truly reinforcing behavior. Then we're going to look at those alternatives and modifications to reward systems and how to get started. So first we're going to start with us, that parent, caregiver, provider of support. And we use the iceberg as a metaphor to talk about that above the surface behavior, which tends to be a smaller part of what's going on below the surface. So for us in the role of those providing support, we have those behaviors above the surface that we want to see. We want to see our kids using alternatives to challenging behavior to get their needs met. We want them to try new things such as food, going to new places, having social interactions. We might want to see success in the bathroom around those skills, or toileting, chores, homework, safety needs, learning how to work towards goals, being able to wait, being patient, understanding how to plan for the long term, and also being able to communicate effectively. So those are some of those behaviors that we want to see, all incredibly reasonable things that we would want to see in our kids. So looking at below the surface, why might we use rewards to influence those behaviors that we want to see? Some of those things might be to avoid a challenging situation, either at home or in the community. Alternatively, it might be to gain calm. Also to motivate and teach. We feel that a reward is needed in order to motivate a child to teach so they can learn those skills. And probably the number one reason is because nothing else but rewards seems to work. It feels like the only tool in your toolkit to have those behaviors that you want to see in your kids. So our step one is identifying the common reasons why reward systems are used. And we'll put the puzzle together towards the end, but that's our first step. We're going to look at ourselves. What behavior do we want to see? And dig deep, look below the surface about why might we be using a reward system to achieve those behaviors that we want to see. So then we're going to look at the child and assessing those underlying needs. So some of those challenging behaviors, and this is meant to be just kind of a general list. If you don't see what you have in mind here, it might fit into one of these categories. So we might see difficulty in the bathroom, those skills, or toileting. We might see fighting and arguing with peers, sibling, or fighting and arguing with adults, meltdowns in the community, not following through on chores or tasks, not wanting to interact with others, picky eating, having a hard time dressing, following through with routines, not seeming motivated to very few interests, not motivated to do different tasks and activities, maybe not having a lot of different leisure skills, not being able to communicate needs, or what seems like not choosing not to communicate needs. We may see dangerous and illegal behavior as well. And what we also see above the surface sometimes is the reward system is in place, but that what we might refer to as sabotage. The person is close to getting the reward, and then it seems like they do everything to not get that reward. So we might see that above the surface as well. So with our iceberg metaphor, that is the behavior that we see is just the small picture, because what's going on below the surface that's driving that behavior, and actually what's truly reinforcing that behavior to continue, is what's going on below the surface. So these are just some things, some common themes. There may be confusion, not having enough information, a lack of consistency, lack of predictability, not knowing what's expected of you, not knowing where you're going, what you're doing, what's next. There's also that natural drive that we all have to explore. Ooh, look at that, that's cool. I want to, I'm motivated to, go towards the thing that is shiny and check it out. Or, you know what, I'm tired of you doing everything for me, I want to be independent. And when kids are learning and growing, becoming independent is not always, you have to learn those skills. You have to become adept at them. So it's not always smooth. So below the surface are those natural drives. What we also might see below the surface is there's fear of something scary, fear of things that might feel threatening that cause anxiety, or fear of failure, of not being able to meet the expectations. More generally, there's developmental cognitive factors, lack of skills. So, you know, for example, if a child is having difficulty in the bathroom, it may be that they're not ready yet, or they're just starting to show readiness skills in the bathroom. So using a reward in that situation would be they don't quite have the skills yet. So they're motivated to get the reward, but they don't have the skills necessarily to gain the reward. Other things going on below the surface are anxiety. And also with anxiety, you see an aversion to compliments. Compliments may actually, like, wow, all I said was, you know, you did a really great job today, and so sometimes compliments can feel like judgment for some kids. So that might be something that's going on below the surface, anxiety being a driver of that. Part of lack of skills could be limited fine gross motor skills, or having sensory needs. And if some people experience the sensory world differently, and so the way they feel inside their body is a constant trigger for them. It's constantly hard to navigate through the world because your clothes never feel comfortable, or your skin never feels comfortable, sounds are too loud, heat is overwhelming, sounds are overwhelming. All of those things make it hard just to navigate through the world. There's also communication challenges, having a difficulty expressing your needs verbally, needing to use alternative forms of communication that might be going on below the surface. There's also medical conditions and pain that could be driving above the surface behavior. If you experience a communication challenge and you're in pain, then you may use a difficult behavior to gain relief, for example. So using a reward system to decrease a behavior if the person is trying to resolve pain would be counterintuitive. And there's also historical factors. So those of you that are might be foster parents, you know, sometimes there's those early life experiences that come into play where you feel like rewards are the only thing that are going to work, or it isn't necessarily a value of yours, but you know, the child that you're supporting has come from a system of rewards. So it's what the child knows, and having to work within that. Schools often use reward systems as well, so maybe wanting to be in line with what the school's doing as well. So there's historical factors is kind of a big topic, either experience with rewards or life experiences that make difficult behavior a more common factor. So a general list, but what we're going to do at step 2 is we're going to assess the underlying needs. We're going to look at that above the surface behavior, and we're going to really dig deep. We're going to think about what could be driving this behavior. Could it be that confusion? Could it be that difficulty communicating? Could it be those early life experiences? Could it be anxiety? We're going to ask ourselves those questions, because if we don't address the underlying needs, then the reward system is probably not going to work. So we're going to get into just talking pretty generally about reward systems and why they often fail. And again, if you're coming in this, oh, they work great for me, then I do want you to understand that this is a very individualized approach. So we're giving you general information about why reward systems fail, but that doesn't mean that what's working for you isn't a good tool. But these are just some things to understand. These are risk factors, things to be aware of, because even if the reward system you're using today is working, you want to look at these possibilities if you start to see signs of these things. So one of the things is what's referred to as satiation. And what that means is that you need to give more rewards for the same effect. So the child's no longer motivated by the original reward. So what we do is we find ourselves, offering, if you do this, you'll get this, and that works. But then once the child has gained the reward that they want, or they're tired of the reward, it's no longer motivating, then you find yourself having to offer bigger, better, more expensive rewards. So you're not able to, it becomes a chain effect where, pretty soon you're offering the trip to Disneyland for, cleaning your bedroom. So satiation is when you have to offer more rewards for the same behavior that you want to see. Addiction, what that means is you create an effect where the child doesn't want to do anything unless they're going to get a reward for it. And probably every single one of us has heard that child say, "What are you going to give me for it?" And had your just brain explode. It's just like, kids today, you hear that stuff. But that's what reward systems do. They create an addiction to rewards to where you feel, I'm only motivated when there's something in it for me. The other part of reward systems and why they might fail is they drive the child to finish but not to do good work. So the child may be shoving, clothes and toys under their bed and in the closet because they've been told they'll get a reward for cleaning their bedroom. So instead of doing a good job at cleaning their bedroom, they just try to finish cleaning their bedroom so they get the reward. Doing homework. If you get a reward for doing your homework, you just try to get it done and have all the spaces and the boxes filled in versus understanding the concepts and getting the work done. So that would be an example of why a reward system might fail, because it creates that the desire to finish is more important than the desire to do good work and understand what good work is. The other part of reward systems is that they increase pressure. They can actually create anxiety where anxiety maybe did not exist before. If there's a reward, if there's a carrot, you're trying to pursue that reward, that goodie. If you don't get it, you have this feeling of failure and insecurity. And so that pressure creates an anxiety where relieving the anxiety becomes more important than actually gaining the reward. So one of the things that I often see is a child is told they will get a reward, and they have so much anxiety over whether or not they will actually get the reward or not that they blow it on purpose, or, well, I don't want to say on purpose, but they blow it. But then they are no longer anxious about whether or not they get the reward. So the true reinforcement for the behavior was, I don't feel anxious anymore. The reward is no longer applicable. It's relieving the anxiety that becomes more important. Other factors are the influence that we have on children when we offer rewards. One of them is manipulation. We teach kids how to manipulate others or how to manipulate environments and situations using rewards. So, it's a skill that we're teaching, how to use stuff to, get things in the world. And, so we shouldn't be surprised when kids kind of throw that back in our face a little bit, because if we're using reward systems, or if we see them doing that in other places, it's a skill that we're teaching them. The other thing is that it singles out both people who may have good behavior as well as poor behavior negatively. So, for example, the child who's doing well and is receiving praise may actually start to have difficult behavior because they want to reset. They want to be like their peers or their siblings. So if nobody's getting the reward, they don't want to be the only one getting the reward. It creates a negative effect in that way. So, and then the kids who are not getting the reward may be singled out negatively because if, the kids are all working towards a goal and one kid is unable to meet the goal, then everybody's held back, and then everybody might look at that other child negatively. So it singles out for both positive and negative effect. It also, a reward system in and of itself is a power struggle. The person who is giving the reward has the control. They're the ones that, give the goodie. So they are the ones that ultimately decide if you met the expectation or not. So by nature, it's a power struggle because there's a winner. There's two potential winners, but on the flip side of that is there's a potential loser if you don't get the reward. And over time, if you only receive rewards in that power struggle type of setting, you're going to want to push back against that. If you feel controlled by rewards, then the rewards become less important than getting out from under the control of the person who's giving the rewards. And when our kids are little, it's oh yeah, you do this, you get this, yay. But as our kids get older, if they've grown up in an environment of reward systems, over time that starts to feel controlling. They may push back, and then they're bigger and they're stronger, and we might not have the rewards that will work anymore. Those rewards that worked at 5 might not work at 15 anymore, and if rewards feel controlling, they don't work anymore, and you also may have a child that hasn't learned the skills to be independent because they've been rewarded for everything that they've done. So that's more of a long-term effect that's possible. So moving, segueing into the more long-term effect of why reward systems fail tomorrow is reward systems, they punish because ultimately there's that power struggle as I talked about before. So if you don't get the reward, then you're being punished. So it's two sides of the same coin. If you don't get the reward, lose the reward, or if you gain the reward and then the reward is taken away, ultimately it's punishment. And there's studies to show that people who tend to use reward systems more often punish than actually reward as well. So again, that's meant to be very general. That's not necessarily those of us here participating, but that there's some studies to show that. The other downside to reward systems is that they can damage relationships. There's a competition that exists within a reward system, and so the goal of cooperating and helping your neighbor to get through a task, to meet a goal, is diminished because it's all about that finishing first or being the best. And there's healthy competition, of course, but in this scenario with rewards, it becomes a competition that reduces cooperation. You might see peers and siblings competing instead of looking for solutions together. And then there's that targeting that I talked about before, where the child who maybe is doing well becomes that trigger for bullies. And then that child might get in trouble on purpose in order to reset their reputation, per se, with peers or siblings. And probably the most important reason why reward systems fail is they don't actually address the problem. They are more likely to create anxiety, sadness, and frustration, especially when you don't get the reward, and especially if you don't have the skills to gain that reward. Those underlying needs that we talked about before are still there. So if you're able, using the example of toiling again, a child that maybe is very motivated to gain the M&M, but doesn't have the skills to use the toilet yet. There's frustration within that because I see what I want, but I'm unable to get my my body to cooperate with what the goal is. And also for kids who for behavior goals that are like around social skills or difficult behaviors such as aggression, if they are below the surface very frustrated because of the lack of skills that they have, they're motivated to do well, but they're unable to, their frustration level causes them to lose their cool faster than other kids, and so they don't get the reward, but the desire to do well is there. They're not being provided with the tools to do well. They're only being told, if you do this, you'll get this, and we're not addressing the problem if we're only using rewards. Other parts of reward systems that might fail over the long term are they discourage trying things out. They discourage practice. They discourage the idea that sometimes you have to make mistakes to learn and grow and improve and get better. So if if you get your homework done, you'll get a reward. The drive to really figure out how this math problem works goes away. You don't take creative risks. You just want to get it right, and you want to get it done, instead of learning how to do it well, and also learning that passion for understanding how things work. And then part of that is similar too is it turns our interest into work. So think about something that you're really, really passionate about, something that gives you a lot of intrinsic motivation, inner pride, something that you don't have to be rewarded to do because just doing it makes you feel rewarded. If using reward systems actually turn what makes us happy on the inside into work, and it makes it less fun for us. If we're being evaluated for things that that make us happy, they become less motivating. We're more likely to experience anxiety versus that joy that we experienced before in doing what makes us feel good. So there's intrinsic motivation, which is that self-determination, inner drive, and it becomes about extrinsic motivation, which is what am I going to get for it. So this is where we start to put steps 1 and steps 2 together. So first, what we want to do is I'm going to give you a moment. If you're here with someone in mind, take a moment to think about the child's challenging above the surface behavior, and there may be a list of 10. Try to pick one of those behaviors just for the purpose of getting through the next couple slides. One of those things that is very challenging that you observe and see. So that next step is going to be considering the behaviors that you'd like to see the child use instead. So think about the challenging behavior that you have in mind, and then think about what you would like them to do instead. What's the desired behavior on the flip side of that challenging behavior? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about what really reinforces difficult behavior and looking at some of these things over here. So we're going to, you have what you have in mind is the challenging behavior, the behavior that you'd like to see instead. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to think about what could be driving that behavior, some of those underlying needs that we went through before. So first off, you want to think of if this behavior And again, this is what's truly reinforcing the behavior. This is what causes the behavior to be relevant, why it's continuing, why even when you're giving rewards it's still happening, or sometimes I give a reward and it works, sometimes it doesn't, or why you have to give a reward, or you feel like that's the only tool that you have in your toolbox. So when you think about that above the surface behavior, and could it be an attempt to escape a situation that feels fearful, threatening, where they're experiencing frustration, where the work might be too hard for them, or certain environments, certain people that could be challenging. One thing I want to add here is there's that factor where, kids need to learn how to cope with things that are difficult. So right now we're just at a place where we're just trying to understand what's driving that behavior. We're not thinking about solutions, or we're not thinking, we are thinking about what behavior we'd like to see instead. But before we can understand what's truly reinforcing the behavior and what skills to teach, we need to have a sense of what need that behavior is meeting. So, that attempt to escape fear, frustration, difficult tasks, or certain environments could be a driver of that behavior. So that would be trying to avoid. And so here we have, could it be an attempt to gain assistance, interaction, independence, and information? One of the common things that I hear is that the child is doing it for attention. And I see that quite a bit. And attention in those contexts is often used as a negative. They just want attention. And I would like to argue that attention is something that we all want, crave, and need. So instead of thinking about it in terms of gaining attention, what kind of attention? What does that attention look like? What shape does that attention take? Because that gives us clues as to what the underlying need is. So if it's the attempt is to gain assistance or help, it's very reasonable to want help, especially if you don't quite have the skills yet to meet those needs on your own, or some days you do have the skills and then other days you're maybe a little bit off, maybe you didn't get enough sleep the night before, all those other factors that can play into it. But first, gaining assistance or help, it's a very reasonable thing. It's a very valid need for, quote, attention. In interaction, what kind of interaction? Is it a social interaction? Is it a distraction from something that's difficult? Is it an interaction for comfort because you feel lonely? What is the nature of that interaction that the child is trying to gain? Is the child trying to gain independence? So when especially kids that experience disability, we tend to do more for them, and they may be capable of doing more, but we tend to maybe step in and do things, or it's hard to wait, so we might complete the task for them or with them. But they're trying to be independent, so that behavior may be their way of trying to push us away. They may be trying to become independent, and we're actually getting in the way of them trying something and learning and not getting it right the first time, but that's part of the learning process. So there could be that desire to gain independence within that as well. On the flip side of us maybe doing more for a child than they have a greater capacity and we might be doing more for them than we should. We also have unusually high expectations of children with disability on the other hand as well. Whereas sometimes I see where we expect the child with a disability to be more in control of their behavior than their peers of the same age. So there's that desire to help a child with a disability be independent, but then there's also that stepping back when the child really does need our help and assistance, where we're like, well, you just need to learn how to do this on your own, when the child actually needs our assistance. So there's, within that attempt to gain assistance or independence, there is that deeper look at our own behavior as well. And are we stepping out when we should be providing assistance, and are we stepping in when we should be allowing independence? So that's, one of those tough questions where we got to look at ourselves a little bit. And then a big one is information. Information is huge, especially when kids have communication challenges. Communication is a two-way street. So communication is how we express ourselves, either verbally or using a communication system of some kind, using gestures, nonverbal information. Communication is also how much we understand, how much we're able to receive by looking, hearing, and processing words. So, and sometimes kids they're able to express themselves very, very well, but their ability to understand is not matched at the same level. So you see a child that is like able to tell you what the expectation is, but not follow through on the expectation. And that might be because they have not actually heard everything or understood everything, but they don't want to let on that they haven't understood everything, so they say, yes, I understand. So the behavior that we may see above the surface is their attempt to gain information. So if, for example, there's a room full of kids, the adult gives instructions, everybody gets up and they look like they know what they're supposed to be doing. But the child that didn't understand is looking around and they start to feel panicked and anxious because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Having a difficult behavior of some kind, knocking something over or pushing someone is actually a really great way to get somebody to come in and provide you with assistance and help and give you that information. Here is what you're supposed to be doing. So looking at this area here and digging really, really deep and looking at our behavior as well in terms of, is this behavior above the surface an attempt to gain assistance, interaction, independence, or information? Other factors are those medical or sensory needs. So, and especially, as I said before, a child that has difficulty communicating that that they might be experiencing pain, they may engage in a difficult behavior because what it triggers us to do is become problem solvers. So we see that above the surface behavior, we start to think maybe we need to give a reward for this behavior not happening or the behavior that we'd like to see happening. But if below the surface it is the only way that they are able to meet their medical needs of us triggering us to become problem solvers, then by providing a reward system where it's not matching up, it's not going to work, or if it does work, it's not going to actually meet that underlying need. With the sensory factors as well, as I said before, experiencing the sensory world differently, we can't turn that on and off like a switch. So if you are jumping off of the couch over and over and over again because you can hardly feel yourself inside your skin, and the only way to be able to feel yourself inside your skin is when your feet hit the floor really, really hard, and it sends those shock waves through your body, and for that moment in time you're actually able to feel yourself inside your body. No reward that you give me is going to be more rewarding than being able to feel myself inside my skin. So those above the surface behaviors, when we're really digging deep, it could be those medical or sensory factors. And then with communication as well, and I kind of talked about that up here in the gain section. Some of the questions we want to ask ourselves here is, especially for those kids who may have what I refer to as invisible disabilities, where and they're able to communicate, tell you what the expectation is, sometimes follow through, but sometimes not follow through. there could be a receptive language challenge there that's a barrier, and the child isn't going to say, well, see, I'm able to express myself really, really well verbally, as you can tell, but you see, I can only hear every third word that you say. So my behavior is a way to compensate for what I don't understand. Wouldn't that be amazing if kids could, come up to us and just give us the whole story? But that's not usually the case. So that's where we have to dig really deep and look below the surface and make some guesses there in terms of what need that behavior might be meeting. So this is what brings us to step 3. So we look at what my child currently does, which is that above the surface challenging behavior. We're going to think about what our expectation is, and we're going to approach modifying reward systems and using alternatives to reward systems based on what those underlying needs might be instead. So when we look at what's truly reinforcing behavior here, this is what we want to reward. We want to reward skills that are related to how to escape environments that are difficult, how to gain this assistance, interaction, independence and information in a more socially appropriate way, how to report that I'm having a medical need, how to communicate to you how that problem can be solved, how to let you know I have a sensory need and how you can help me meet that maybe in a way that's less impactful on the environment, and then opening up those channels of communication. So those are the things that we want to reward and reinforce versus that above the surface behavior. So that's where our step 3 is. Once we have that understanding, we're going to look at rewards a little bit differently. So these are some of the modifications to reward systems that we're going to look at. So and how we're going to go, again, we're going to be modifying this based on having that understanding of what the true need is of the behavior. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to be more discreet about rewards versus having everybody's behavior goals posted on a on a chart, and we can see that Jimmy only has 2 stars and Angie has 15 stars. That in and of itself can cause anxiety and failure, feeling of failure and insecurity. So one way is to modify reward systems is just make it a natural part of the environment. Avoid making a fuss about it, especially if the child has an underlying need of reducing anxiety, especially, or if compliments are difficult, if they have historical challenges with rewards, and we're trying to help them, kind of peel them away from seeing rewards as how to get their needs met. So, and to also understand that those posted charts or big presentations and productions about rewards can sometimes actually be a trigger for disappointment. That can actually be a trigger for a challenging behavior as well. So being more discreet with reward systems. The other one is offer appreciation versus a reward. So that's changing how you think about things a little bit. So instead of you do this, you get this, instead give the reward as a surprise. And I noticed that you worked really hard on your homework today, and that was and that was math is difficult for you. Let's go get some ice cream. So the reward is offering appreciation for hard work, and it's not planned. We didn't say, if you do your personal best on your math today and really give it your best shot, I'm going to get you ice cream, because that would actually promote just finishing the work and not doing your best. So that appreciation reward is something, it's a surprise. And one of the side benefits of appreciation versus rewards in this context is it keeps folks on their toes. You never know when the reward's going to be coming, and so you think, oh, well, if hard work and dedication are what get me rewards around here sometimes, then I'm going to be more focused on, you know, that behavior instead of I do this, I get this kind of behavior. So to decrease that competition piece, don't make rewards a contest. So if you're going to have a reward system, have it be where if everyone that beats the expectation gets the same reward. So with that said, you are going to want to modify even further at that expectation. So if there's a child who lacks the skills to meet the expectation that you expect of everyone, who will all get the same reward, you may need to help that child get the same reward for the same effect, but not the expectation. So if if everybody's earning a star for a certain expectation, but that child isn't able to meet that expectation, maybe their steps toward meeting that expectation that are measurable, that we, like if you do, these 3 things here that are similar to but not quite the expectation, you will get the same reward as everyone else. So we may need to modify our expectations. That does not mean lower our expectations. It just means helping the child, meeting them where they're at, and and we want to reward them with where their capacity is, and then we can begin to slowly, at their pace, increase the expectations. We want to help them get to meeting the same expectation as everyone else, as close as they're able to. So those are some of the modifications to consider and more. So what I call these natural rewards. And so this is where the rewards match the task. So for example, when the dishes are done, we can make cookies. So the reward is based on the fact that, well, we need clean dishes in order to put the cookies on. Or, when you unload the dishwasher, then we can make cookies. Or so similar kinds of natural environment rewards where if the chores don't get done, then we're unable to do what goes along with that. So, and that can be tricky, but that will, again, that's on your part, looking in your day with your child, where are those natural rewards? And what's great about this is, because this is a challenge for us, and you may need to sit down with a piece of paper and, like, where are these natural rewards in my environment? Because they build cooperation and collaboration and helping and contribution. The child's able to see, hey, I'm a part of this household, or I'm a part of this environment, and my contribution makes a difference. If I get this dishwasher unloaded, then my mom will have time to make cookies with me. If I get my room clean, my mom would less of a fuss than normal. My mom will have time to, sit down and watch a movie with me. If I get all these Legos, cleaned up, my dad will have time to, play that board game with me. So the child sees their role in the household as very important. So the rewards are based on collaboration, cooperation, contribution, and inherent within the task as well. So this is, again, this is a harder one. This stuff doesn't always come naturally to us. So start looking in your day for these opportunities for those natural rewards. The other modification you can make is providing choice and control. So because rewards by nature are controlling, and that power struggle that we talked about before, and they're used to control or influence behavior. So if we actually have the child be a part of the reward system, so they will be the ones that inform the process of what rewards will be given, and what expectations will be met. And this is, this is a negotiation, not necessarily, something like, oh, well, if I pick up this piece of paper, you're going to, take me to Disneyland. So, obviously we get to have our perspective in this as well. But it's, again, it's our perspective is being considered and the child's perspective is being considered. So they're going to be more invested in this reward system because they had a say in it. They didn't come home from school one day and were told, oh, hey, by the way, now we have a reward system, and here's your star chart, and here's what you have to do to get all these things, and I worked really hard on this all day for you. Whereas it's like, oh, hey, I have this idea. I would like your room to be a little bit cleaner. Do you have any ideas about, what will help you get your room clean, or what will help you get your homework done with less of a fuss? And what the rewards might be, and what the accomplishments will look like. So giving choice and control within that might be helpful. So those are some modifications to maybe with the current reward systems that you're using. So there's also looking at, and I'll back up here to this slide here, when we're looking at what's truly reinforcing behavior, an attempt to escape, an attempt to get help, assistance, a need met, to relieve pain or sensory needs, or to get someone to start problem solving to what your basic needs might be, or to communicate a message, to get a message across. That is what's truly reinforcing that difficult behavior. So what we're looking at here is reinforcement strategies versus rewards. So we have that idea in our head of that behavior that we'd like to see. I'd like my child, instead of throwing the remote at me when I say it's time for bed, I would like them to hand it to me instead. Maybe not the best example, but we have an idea. So now we need to teach that skill and reinforce that new skill. So we're not rewarding a new behavior, we're reinforcing a new skill. So these are some of the basics on how you would approach reinforcement versus rewards. So one of the things is to promote motivation and learning skills. And what that might look like is it will feel like you are rewarding a behavior. And this is where it gets really, really tricky, because when, for example, a child has a meltdown, and we might be told you just need to ignore them when they do that. But if the goal is for them to gain assistance and interaction because they have a need that they need to communicate, ignoring that behavior doesn't meet that need. So it feels counterintuitive to us sometimes to give, quote, attention to a child that's having a meltdown when our belief is that we should be ignoring that behavior. So that's where behavior change comes in on our part, where it feels like we're reinforcing the behavior, but really what we're doing is we're reinforcing skill building. We actually are reinforcing that behavior that we want to see instead. So here's an example, praising a child for handling disappointment. And this is the kid that has just kicked you in the shins and, thrown something on the ground and is, beating on the car door. And then they're just like, and then they take a big deep breath and they calm down. So, and the last thing you think of, why would I be rewarding that behavior? But you're actually going to reinforce it. You're going to be like, I see that you are calming down and you are handling this change in the schedule. Thank you. So we're going to actually, with a kindness in our heart and a warmth and caring, express. We're going to reinforce our appreciation for calm, even though our knee's still hurting, and that thing's still sitting there on the ground. And as much as we want to say you better pick that up, we're not going to do that. And we're reinforcing that child to see handling disappointment, coping with the change in the schedule as a skill, as a strength, or turning around a potential meltdown. I have here as well. So, like you're in the thick of it, and that child's able to turn it around, and you're able to say, like, I see that you are calming, I see that you are breathing, we're going to get through this, thank you. So that would be an example of how we're going to reinforce the skill of coping, calming, learning to wait, being patient, transitioning, dealing with things that cause you anger and frustration and fear, is actually reinforcing that with our warmth, our face looking happy, positive, specific positive praise, and that is that might be hard for you, and you know, as a parent, sometimes that's hard for me. So you know, you have to, if you find yourself being like, that's not how you solve problems around here and you're in trouble, and you know, like that old behavior that, you know, we all use as parents, like, you know, you're learning a new skill too. So reinforce yourself, but don't beat yourself up. So that's going to be one example of reinforcing a behavior in a different way, reinforcing that behavior you want to see. I want my child to cope with frustration. Then when they do cope with it, even if it's after the end of a meltdown, praise them for it. Another thing that you might want to do is reinforce low levels of challenging behavior. So often behavior happens in a chain. So first it's that stomp of the foot, the slam of the door, you hear things, you know, being knocked over, and then, you know, it might escalate into something worse. So, so there's usually a first behavior in a chain of behaviors, and it happens really, really fast sometimes. So it's hard to get in there and turn it around. But this is just something to be aware of, is we actually, when we see that first stomp of the foot, or when we hear that first, it's not there, or when the breathing changes, or, you know, that twinkle in the eye, like, oh no, it's about to happen, we actually want to provide positive support right then. We want to teach and reinforce those skills that we want to see at the very beginning of a chain. So because then they don't engage in that aggressive behavior or that dangerous behavior, or, you know, some of those more challenging behaviors is what I have in mind right now. They don't get there because you've helped them at that early stage. So again, for example, you see what reinforcement of that looks like. So the child throws something, and you go, oh, so you know, you just threw that, and so you just let me know that you're angry. Remember, when you're angry, you can say to me, I'm so mad. And when you say, I'm so mad, I will, you know, help you, you know, with solve your problems. And that's a lot of words I just used. It might not quite play out like that. But an example of the child, you know, has a early behavior. You reinforce them by recognizing that they have a need. So instead of judgment or you can't do that, that's disrespectful, pick that up, we're going to say, oh, you know what, you're communicating to me that you have a need right now. You're angry, and remember, there's a skill that you can use instead of this that we work on. So know what the skill is that you want the child to use ahead of time. And again, that's that behavior that we want to see that we talked about around at step 1. And so again, that's another really challenging one. My child just, you know, swore at me. What do you mean I'm going to reinforce that behavior? You're not reinforcing the behavior, you're reinforcing the use of a skill. And it isn't always going to be pretty, and it may still become that full, you know, incident. But it's a process that we're all learning together. So So give that some time, but you're not reinforcing the behavior, you're reinforcing the use of a skill, not the behavior. The behavior meets a different need, or, you know, those below the surface needs that we talked about before, of relieving anxiety, gaining predictability, getting assistance, escaping fear, all of those things. So reinforcing individual steps is another form of reinforcement. And so this would be when we're teaching a skill that might be a part of a longer process. So toilet training, for example, when we might want to use those rewards. And we may still use rewards in that. But what we're doing is, instead of, you know, you do this one long series of behaviors that has 10 individual steps in it, you get this, and the child's not doesn't yet have the skills to do that, we're actually going to reinforce smaller steps in the process. So we refer to this as chaining, and you can do what's called forwards chaining or backwards chaining. And forwards chaining, for example, if you're teaching a child to brush their own teeth, for example, if you do forwards chaining, you would actually be giving them maybe some verbal praise if they just touch the toothbrush to their mouth, and then we help them with the rest of the process. So if the child holds the toothbrush, touches it to their mouth, we're like, good job brushing, not maybe good job brushing your teeth, but you did it, yay, high five, and then you help them finish the process. And then the next time you work on that skill, it's actually putting the toothbrush in your mouth. Yay, you did it, now I'm going to help you with the rest of this. So chaining from the front of the task would be reinforcing each individual step from the beginning. Chaining towards the back of the task would be actually going backwards in that process. So, for example, teaching someone to make pancakes. They're watching you through the whole process of making the pancakes, and then they get to eat the pancakes, and that's the so that's the and you praise them for eating the pancakes. Well, you're really enjoying those pancakes. You love pancakes, and they'd have to really love pancakes for this to be effective. And then the next time you make pancakes, you have them do the very last flip of the pancake, or you have them maybe spread the butter or pour the syrup, or they're learning to cut the pancake and they do one cut and you do the rest. Or, so you slowly start to move from eating the pancakes towards the front of the task. So they're learning how to actually mix the batter and all that, but they're not starting from the beginning, they're actually starting from the end, which is enjoying the delicious pancakes. So that might be how you would reinforce individual steps of a skill. And you're going to accept close approximations, because learning is a process. Learning is hard, and kids, their brains are developing, their bodies are developing. We all develop at different paces, and then if you experience a disability, it may be more difficult for you to do things that you see your peers doing. So we have to individualize what those individual steps look like, and we also need to make modifications along the way in that process. So the other thing that we can do to help reinforce is use a first-then, either a schedule, like a visual schedule, or just in how you kind of go about your day. So first-then, which you might already be familiar with, is simply giving the information about here's what we're doing first and here's what we're doing next. And for some of our kids, this might be a visual schedule, it might be a list, it might be a planner. And again, it might just be us saying, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. First and then is a great strategy just in general to give people information about transitions and helping them to prepare for schedule changes and those kinds of things. So how you can use this as a reinforcement strategy, especially when the behavior that we want to see above the surface is a child that is learning how to be patient and wait. A child that is learning to cope with frustration. That's the skill that we want to see. So what we need, when we use a schedule, either a verbal schedule or an actual physical schedule, we want to stick to the schedule, even when it's hard. So for example, first we're going to use the bathroom, and then then it'll be time for ice cream, for example. The whole process of using the bathroom may be very, very difficult. You may feel yourself getting frustrated, and what you don't want to do, you feel like now that you can have ice cream is a reward for the behavior. You're like, now you can't have ice cream because that was just too difficult, and everybody's frustrated and the child doesn't get what was next on the schedule. So that's where we're using schedules as reinforcement versus rewards. So if you're using a schedule of any kind, nothing on the schedule should be taken off the schedule unless the schedule changes, it's not available, unforeseen circumstances, or safety. Those are the only times that the schedule should change is my recommendation. Even if it was really hard to get through the soccer practice, if McDonald's is what was next on the schedule, it's just what's next on the schedule. So, and how you can use that as a reinforcement strategy. Let's say you maybe have a longer schedule that's like maybe, first you're going to clean your room, then you're going to do your homework, and then we'll watch a movie. Our natural motivation, if it's a bit difficult, might be to not allow that movie to happen. But what we would say when things are being delayed and there's whining or even escalation of behavior, we're going to use that schedule to say, I know that movie is important to you, and we need to do what's first on the schedule before the movie. So let's get through the schedule so we can get to that movie. So you're not rewarding the behavior. You're simply saying, there's a schedule to follow. There's a movie at the end of it. Let's get through this. So you're reinforcing following the schedule, sticking to a schedule, not actually doing it great and as what you would expect. So, and the other part of that, enjoying difficult tasks is not required. So if morning routine is a struggle for you, that your child doesn't have to be happy about dressing themselves. They don't have to be happy about putting their shoes on, but if they're doing it, they're meeting the expectation, period. And that can be a hard one too, because our blood starts boiling, we get frustrated, and that would be where the piece where we change our behavior. Learning, growing, doing things you don't want to do is part of life. And so if the child is sitting at the table, they don't necessarily have to be enjoying sitting at the table. And you can always, again, you're working on the skills of, we eat together, or, or we cooperate, we collaborate. You're always going back to the drawing board to figure out what skill needs to be taught, how to make these experiences more pleasant. What are those underlying needs? How do I change my behavior? What skills does my child lack? And helping to make these difficult tasks not being enjoyed more pleasant for everyone involved. So this isn't a constant state that you live in of, every day my child is unhappy to be doing what they're doing, and I'm just going to allow that. That's not where I'm asking you to stay. It's simply, in that process of learning and growing, allow those difficult tasks to, actually be unpleasant. Or the child be like, this, sucks, and I can't stand this. Be like, I know, but you're getting so much better, at doing this on your own. And just leave it at that. And eventually, that, hey, you did it. Boy, this was hard for you yesterday, and now look, you're practically a pro. That stuff really goes a long way with kids. So, the language of practice, wow, this is hard for you, but think about how much better you're going to be at this if you keep at it. So I talked about appreciation before. So, there's a lot of stuff out there about how praise actually can be damaging for kids. And praise is like, what? Praise is what we're supposed to do, right? They tell us, 4-to-1 ratio of praise to, negatives and all this stuff. What? But so there's, some different schools of thought there. And how I'm asking you to look at this is notice and appreciate instead of praising. So, I had a boss once, and every time she walked into the room, it was like, I just don't know what I could do without you guys, and you guys are so amazing, and you do such a good job. And it got to be where I actually would feel like anxious and irritated because I just didn't feel like it meant anything. It felt like it was just like a script that she was using. And the same goes for our kids. If we're saying good job every time they throw something away, if we're saying good job every time they clean their plate, it becomes meaningless. So reserve your good jobs, great jobs, awesomes, and make it more of a notice and appreciation. Because praise can also feel like judgment. It's somebody else's opinion of what good work and a great job is. So there's that piece. but it's also, if you're describing what you see, there's less judgment or no judgment. So for example, I see you finished your chores. Thank you. You're not saying you did a great job at your chores or a bad job at your chores. You're simply making a comment on the fact that they have been completed, and you're thanking the person for doing what was expected of them, and not the quality of the work. And that would certainly be, maybe a later conversation of, hey, so I noticed, when you did your chores, you didn't quite finish them. What's up? Do you need more information? Was the instructions not enough? Or, so you can always go back in for quality of work, but when you want to give praise, you want to notice and appreciate versus good job, great job, awesome, woo. You want to have it be more praise that is less judgmental and more of a, commentary on, something that you accomplished. So this quick tip down here is, when our kids when social interactions are difficult for them, we get really excited when we see them interacting with peers, and sometimes we want to jump in and be like, oh, yay, and, I'm so happy to see you talking with friends, and we sometimes do that irritating stuff as parents, and those are those times to just shut it, basically, kind of wait back, let the kids figure it out. In those social interactions, it's the reward, the reinforcement is just within that learning and growing together and figuring out how to communicate with each other. So after that social interaction happens, you can say, I noticed that you were playing with that little girl over there. Was that fun? So we can have that social interaction, conversation, and verbal notice and appreciation after the fact, but try not to. That can cause anxiety. It can actually end the interaction that you're so excited about if you get in there too soon. So this is really, really big picture stuff, alternatives to reward systems, and this is someday this will be like a 3-hour long training, and you guys will come back and join us. So I'm just going to briefly go over this more big picture stuff here, and then we'll get to questions. We'll talk about next steps and then questions. So alternatives to reward systems are basically not looking at reinforcement or rewards, but looking at, from the ground up, foundationally, raising kids, and again, kids of all ages, so there's, it's never too soon to start, or never too soon, or too late to start. Thinking about rewards differently, or not using rewards, and thinking about our own motivations and what the goals are and how to achieve those goals. So first we'll talk about content. And so one of the things you want to ask yourself in terms, content is the content of the expectation. So first off, do the rules conflict with basic needs and drives? So then this would be looking at yourself for those times when you feel nothing but rewards work. You're going to look at the content of that expectation. So for example, asking a 3-year-old to sit still for 90 minutes conflicts with the basic needs and drives of 3-year-olds. So rewarding them for sitting still for 90 minutes is a recipe for failure, basically. So an example is looking at the child as an individual, both chronological age and just their natural drives as a person, and what their basic needs and drives are. Are they capable of the reward that you are providing them? In terms of their ability to sit still, their ability to wait to go to the bathroom, their ability to be thirsty and not get that met immediately. So those basic needs, those drives for, to relieve our hunger, our thirst, being tired, needing to move, needing comfort and assistance. Is the expectation possible, physically possible? Kids with limited fine and gross motor skills, wouldn't it be great if they could write, 10 sentences but can they? And what support do they need maybe to do that instead of if I reward them, then they'll be motivated to do it. And then looking at if the content of the expectation is developmentally appropriate, and that would be, just, again, for developmentally would be, physical development, cognitive development, looking at the person. This is not about lowering expectations or assuming a person with a disability can't do something. This is just looking at them as a person and where they're at developmentally, and if that expectation that we have is developmentally appropriate. And if it's not, then, how do we teach those skills? How do we provide accommodations and support so the person is able to achieve that expectation? And then reconsider if your restriction is necessary. If you're, if the rule in the house is, I don't have one. Oh, again, I'll use my example. Being quiet while I, coming home and being quiet for an hour or something. And the rule is broken. Ask yourself, why is this restriction in place? Is it necessary? What needs do I have that need to be met, and can I meet them in another way instead of, asking a child to conflict with their basic needs and drives, or, what's the motivation for my restriction that's in place? And you can weigh this in a couple different ways. One is, health and safety is a big one. A restriction in place that is health and safety based is usually is always okay. Like, for a high percentage of the time, health and safety always comes first. That restriction is necessary. But if the restriction is, not having a second cupcake when I said you can only have one, that would be one of those times where you're like, well, there was a whole plate full of cupcakes there. I said you can only have one, and they took a second one. And, I feel like, I need to get into reward and punishment mode, when you might want to reconsider that. There's a plate full of cupcakes here. I said just take one, but I didn't put them away. You're going to ask yourselves those questions. Does the child have the skills to, wait? Did they understand what I said? Did I take a second cupcake and tell them that they could only have one? Those kinds of things that you want to ask yourself about the restriction. And you're always addressing underlying needs, looking at those below the surface pieces and what's really reinforcing behavior. So collaboration, we've talked about some of this in looking at modifications and reinforcement strategies. But, I was raised in the, because I said so, kind of parenting situation, and most of us probably were, where, why do I have to do that? It doesn't matter why. It's because I said so. So I'm going to, challenge that. Here's why I'm setting this restriction. Here's why this boundary is in place is actually important information for a child to have. And you know what? It might, then you might get more questions. It might be, there's conflict may arise from that. But it's absolutely healthy to collaborate with the child, and instead of like, do this because I said so, do this because it's it's a safety, do this because it's a skill you need to learn, do this because it's respectful. Giving them that information and peeling back the layers of what that expectation is all about. Getting the child's perspective on the matter. Rewards ignore that there are sometimes reasons for kids' behavior. So if you provide that opportunity, instead of why did you do that, ask them, well, when what was happening for you then? So that instead of the child being like on guard, why always puts everyone on guard. Instead asking, what were you experiencing when you did that, or can you help me understand, what was happening when you did that? Coming at it from the angle of getting their perspective versus, oh, you're in trouble now. So that would be one way of doing that in the moment, or in that debrief, maybe after the fact. What happened there? But let's figure out how to solve this problem. Seeing behavior as an unsolved problem versus and someone who doesn't have enough information versus somebody who's willfully trying to get away with something. And so within all that is promoting understanding of why, understanding of your perspective. So we want their perspective, but they also need to hear our perspective. And then once we have the child's perspective and we have our perspective, and those are really clear, we actually can develop a plan with the child and collaborate with them. And children of all ages, and children, at any, all developmental capacities, if the child isn't able to tell us what their perspective is, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and try to understand their perspective. So that plan can happen, with the child, even if they aren't able to necessarily tell us what their perspective is. We might have to do a little investigating there. And then another alternative to reward systems, within that collaboration model is providing choices. And we talked about choice and control as a modification, but also within collaboration, helping kids, make good choices on their own, become problem solvers. So we say to a child, here's your perspective, here's my perspective. We've come up with this plan together. What's your input? What are your options? What are your choices within this? And then we get real quiet and we allow them to provide some input there if they're able to give us that input. So then the child becomes a problem solver. We aren't the one telling them what to do. They're actually the ones coming up with the solutions to the problem, or coming up with solutions with us to the problem. And then just raising caring kids, and our kids are in the audience. They are watching us and how we react and interact. On an earlier slide, I talked about how rewards actually teach kids how to manipulate and power struggle. So that's what we're modeling for them in some ways with using reward systems. So we want to model something different, and we want to model making a contribution, collaborating, being a problem solver, accepting that mistakes are okay, accepting that you don't always get it right, accepting that nobody has to be perfect, modeling that as a value, because our kids will watch us and how we react and interact, and that's how they will learn. Providing those explanations, so explaining why the world works the way it does, why sometimes things aren't consistent, why you can be a very caring person and somebody might not be caring back to you. Giving kids that information about those double standards sometimes that exist, and then always assuming the positive. Assuming that difficult behavior is not to push our buttons, to get away with something, to manipulate, sabotage, coming at it from that perspective of what need are they trying to meet, what is a lagging skill, how can I change my behavior? So approaching it from that positive, that this is an unsolved problem, that there's missing information, and there could be a solution to this. And providing those caring opportunities, providing those opportunities to make contributions. And often when kids are receiving services, they aren't necessarily taught how to give back. They are a receiver of supports, but if they're a child with a disability, they may be more isolated. They might have less experience because maybe they're more sheltered. So providing those opportunities for them to make donations to of toys to other kids, or being able to make even those contributions just within the household. I can't load the dishwasher without you. I need your role in this. Even if it takes a little bit longer, and we're looking at the clock, I can't do this without you. So providing those opportunities for your child to care for you when you're sick, even. So those kinds of things can go a long way in. The reward becomes the inner pride that you feel, the self-determination, versus you do this, you get this. And teaching perspective taking, and understanding that, and this is a skill that develops later for a lot of kids, understanding that other people have a different perspective than you. And that they may be thinking something different than you think they're thinking, and so learning how to anticipate how others might be feeling about your actions and what perspective they might be taking about your behavior. You know, actually having those conversations, maybe more debriefs after the fact about, you know, what other people's perspectives are on challenging behavior or difficult situations. So we'll take questions here in a second, but so this is our last slide, and this is I'm all about small, realistic, achievable, easy ways to get started on things that might be new for you as the parent. So I kind of wanted to break this down into that, you know, like get started. You can do this today. So we've done a little bit of this work as we've been going through and you've been thinking about stuff. So you focused on that one time when you might use rewards and consider what those underlying needs might be. So if you're, you know, kind of following along, you're already doing that. You already have that, that behavior in mind when you might be using rewards and what that underlying need might be instead and how you're going to address that underlying need. So focus on one thing, even if there's a list of 10, because chances are if you focus on one difficult behavior, there's the skills that you learn around addressing the underlying needs of one behavior may actually have an impact on a whole chain and cycle of behaviors as well. So focus on one versus looking at all of them. And then looking at the reward modifications or reinforcement strategies, pick one of those to try instead that might address that underlying need. And then just every day, you know, tell yourself, reflect on misbehavior, even very, very, very challenging behavior as a teachable moment. There's always something to learn about every experience that we have. So reflecting on, you know, something that was difficult as, you know, what can be learned from this, what can be taught, what skills are needed in this situation versus what rewards can I give to make this stop or for them to do this instead. And the most important is to appreciate yourself. So just says praise yourself, appreciate yourself, because you know this is hard work, and you know we need to be taking that time every day for ourselves whenever we can grab it to just say, you know what, I did it, whatever that looks like for you. So we are at our question and Q&A phase. If anybody has any questions, so Jenny, you want to let me know? Do we have any?
We have not had any questions so far, so if anybody does have any questions and you haven't had a chance to type those in, we'll give you a second here to go ahead and submit those. Okay, we've had one question just asking if we can download the slides. Stephanie, is this going to be available or just the recording is going to be on the website?
We, Dan, we do send out the PowerPoint after the presentation, correct? Oh, Dan, you're muted. No, but I can hear you, and I'll say what you just said. So yes, after this presentation, you will be getting a PDF copy of the presentation. And we, I wanted to just add that on our website, otac.org, actually, yeah, I think we have a slide here that actually has that, doesn't it? Yes. We do parent trainings all over the state of Oregon. We'll be doing more webinars, so really encourage you to go to our website and see when a training might be coming to your area. If you happen, no, it's full actually. I'm doing a training tomorrow night, but I shouldn't. It's full, so never mind. But we'll have several trainings coming up in January as well, so check our website for when those might be coming to your area or other webinars.
Okay, and the next question that we had is just where will they be able to find the recordings on the website? Is it going to be on this same parent training page?
Yes, so when you go to this link here, you will be directed to the page that has all of our parent trainings listed, and next to the webinars that will be under past trainings, it will say, watch this presentation.
Great. Anything else? Oh, one more.
Okay.
Somebody is asking if we do one-on-one behavior support to help with kiddos.
Yes. And I will. I think if I put something in the chat, it comes in. We do, and there's a couple of. I'm putting my email. I think that will go out to everybody. And I can answer your individual questions. OTAC provides in-home behavior support through a couple different avenues. One of them would be going to your service coordinators, your county developmental disability coordinator, and if you don't know what that is, definitely email me, and I can explain what that is because you may not be receiving those services. But you can request OTAC services through what's called our Crisis and Community Supports project, and through that project, it's a partnership that we, or rather a contract that we have with the state of Oregon to provide in-home behavior consultation to families throughout Oregon. And the other way that we can work with families is we also do private behavior consultation, and you would email me, and I would give you the information about our rates and where we're able to go to in the state, and find out what your needs are, and give you some ideas about how many hours that we would need to provide support.
All right, that appears to be all the questions that I have on here.
Well, great, and so yeah, my email's up there, so if anybody if you're shy and you want to ask a question afterwards, please email me and I'll definitely get back to you. And you'll check out our website and hope to see you all at more parent trainings.
All right, thank you, everyone. If you would like some more information about our services or to learn more about upcoming training opportunities, please visit our website at www.otac.org. At the end of this broadcast, a short survey is going to pop up, and we would appreciate it if you could take just a moment to answer the questions. We look forward to your feedback. On behalf of the staff at OTAC, I'd like to say thank you and have a great evening. Goodbye, everyone.